Throughout history, humanity has faced disasters that changed the fate of nations. Some struck suddenly like lightning, while others were born from the cruelty of wars and human mistakes. In this video, we will explore 5 of the most devastating tragedies that left deep scars in human history. Hiroshima disaster. On August 6, 1945, just days before the end of World War II, and with Japan refusing to surrender and halt the war, the United States of America made a decision that remains one of the most controversial and painful in human history. An American warplane, the Enola Gay, dropped the first atomic bomb in history on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The bomb was called Little Boy, weighing over 4 tons and loaded with uranium-235. When it detonated about 600 meters above the city center, it unleashed a massive destructive force equivalent to nearly 15,000 tons of TNT. In a matter of moments, Hiroshima was turned into hell, with more than 70% of the city's buildings completely destroyed as the infamous mushroom cloud rose into the sky. As for the human toll, it was catastrophic. Nearly 80,000 people were killed instantly, while the number rose to about 140,000 by the end of 1945 due to horrific burns, explosions, and nuclear radiation, whose effects persisted for many years, causing cancers and genetic deformities in the generations that followed. This attack was intended to force Japan into unconditional surrender, which was achieved just days later when another atomic bomb was dropped on the city of Nagasaki on August 9th. Thus, the curtain fell on World War II, but only after humanity had paid a devastating price. Chernobyl disaster. On April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl disaster occurred, which is considered one of the worst nuclear catastrophes in human history. It took place at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant near the city of Pripyat in Ukraine, which was then part of the Soviet Union. That night, engineers were conducting a safety test on the 4th reactor of the Chernobyl power plant. The purpose of the test was to determine whether the reactor could continue cooling itself in the event of a power outage. However, due to a series of human and design errors, the safety systems were shut down. The power level was reduced to an unsafe degree. A massive buildup of steam occurred inside the reactor. At 1:23 a.m., a massive explosion caused by steam pressure destroyed the reactor's roof, followed by another explosion due to the ignition of graphite. This released a huge amount of radioactive materials into the atmosphere, such as iodine-131, cesium-137, and strontium-90, and triggered massive fires at the site. The radioactive contamination released is estimated to be 400 times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. This resulted in the death of 31 people, including plant workers and firefighters. Only 36 hours after the explosion, authorities began evacuating the residents of Pripyat, a city of about 50,000 people. Later, the evacuation zone was expanded to a 30-kilometer radius around the plant, affecting around 116,000 people. After that, the Soviet Union deployed the liquidators to the disaster zone. More than 600,000 people, including soldiers and firefighters. They carried out cleanup operations, buried radioactive materials, and built the concrete sarcophagus known as the sarcophagus to contain the reactor. It is estimated that thousands of people later died from cancers and radiation-related illnesses. The long-term death toll is estimated at around 9,000 cases. The disaster contaminated the surrounding land with radiation for thousands of years. The forest died and turned into what is now known as the Red Forest. The nearby rivers and waters were polluted, affecting both wildlife and humans. The Holocaust tragedy. The story began with the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party to power in Germany in 1933. With his arrival, he launched a racist policy based on the idea of Aryan supremacy, seeking to purify society of all those he considered inferior or a threat to his project. At the forefront of these were the Jews. In 1935, laws known as the Nuremberg Laws were enacted, which stripped Jews of their civil and political rights and prohibited them from marrying or mixing with Germans. With the outbreak of World War II in 1939 and Germany's occupation of several European countries, persecution spread everywhere. Ghettos were established, closed-off districts where Jews were isolated under tragic humanitarian conditions, deprived of food and medicine, awaiting an uncertain fate. Starting in 1941, the Nazi regime launched what became known as the Final Solution, a systematic extermination plan that specifically targeted Jews, along with other groups such as the Roma, the disabled, homosexuals, and Soviet prisoners of war. Huge concentration and extermination camps were established, the most notable of which were Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland, the largest extermination camp, Treblinka, Majdanek, Dachau, Sachsenhausen. In these camps, the Nazi death machine operated relentlessly in the gas chambers. At Auschwitz alone, more than 1 million people were killed using Zyklon gas. After the killings, the bodies were burned in giant crematoria in an attempt to conceal the evidence. The total number of victims during the Holocaust is estimated at around 6 million Jews who were exterminated, about 500,000 Roma, tens of thousands of homosexuals and political opponents, more than 3 million Soviet prisoners of war who perished. In 1945, as the Allied forces advanced, the camps were liberated one after another, revealing to the world the magnitude of the tragedy. Indelible images of emaciated bodies, survivors on the brink of death, and piles of shoes, eyeglasses, and human hair stood as witnesses to an unprecedented catastrophe. The Bhopal disaster. On the night of December 3, 1984, the city of Bhopal in the Indian state of Madhya Pradesh witnessed a deadly leak of toxic gas from a pesticide plant owned by the American company Union Carbide. The plant contained a large tank filled with a dangerous substance known as methyl isocyanate. Due to negligence and poor maintenance, large amounts of water leaked into the tank, triggering a violent chemical reaction that caused a sudden rise in temperature. The pressure inside the tank increased until it burst, releasing more than 40 tons of toxic gas into the city's atmosphere within just a few hours. By dawn, thick clouds of gas had blanketed the entire city of Bhopal. Thousands of people woke up struggling to breathe, with burning eyes and uncontrollable coughing. Many were unable to even escape, collapsing dead in their streets and homes. Nearly 3,000 people were killed in the first few hours. As the days and weeks passed, the death toll rose to more than 15,000. The injured and affected exceeded 500,000 people, many of whom continued to suffer from chronic diseases affecting the respiratory system, eyes, and heart. And the residents of the area still suffer today from pollution and its health effects, as well as severe deformities among children born in Bhopal after the disaster. Texas disaster. On the morning of April 16, 1947, a French cargo ship called SS Grand Camp was docked at the port of Texas City on the Gulf of Mexico. This ship was loaded with a huge quantity of ammonium nitrate, a chemical used as fertilizer but also highly explosive when exposed to heat. At around 9 a.m., a small fire broke out in the cargo hold. The crew tried to put it out, but they didn't realize the danger of the material inside. They actually made things worse when they decided to close the hatch doors and spray water, turning the hold into a pressurized oven. At 9:12 a.m., the first explosion occurred. The blast was so powerful that the ship was almost vaporized, and a massive fireball rose up, covering the sky. The explosion created a shockwave that was felt as far as 150 miles away. Windows shattered in distant cities such as Houston. The explosion ignited other nearby ships in the port. Hours later, another ship carrying ammonium nitrate also exploded. The flames spread to nearby factories, including oil refineries, turning almost the entire city into a blazing inferno. Between 581 and 600 people were killed, some of them never found because of the force of the blast. More than 5,000 people were injured with wounds and burns. Over 1,000 buildings were destroyed, and large parts of Texas City were reduced to rubble. The material losses were estimated at nearly $100 million at that time. The disaster led to major changes in industrial safety regulations and chemical storage procedures. To this day, the Texas City disaster is considered the largest industrial catastrophe in U.S. history. These were glimpses of disasters that shook the world and left unforgettable scars. The causes may differ: war, industry, or negligence, but the outcome was the same: countless innocent lives lost, and history remains a witness. The question that still lingers is, have we truly learned from these tragedies?